Alright, welcome back to the Recipe Analyst. Today we're going to be making the Malted Banana Upside Down Cake from What's for Dessert by Claire Saffitz. And to get started, we're just going to prepare the bananas to be roasted. So I line the baking sheet with aluminum foil and then arrange the bananas on that baking sheet. Make sure you get all the stickers off. I just set that to the side while the oven comes up to temperature. Next, I'm going to prepare the butter that's going to go into the batter, and make sure your butter, sour cream, and eggs are all room temperature. I had mine sitting out for about 7 hours to really soften and warm up. Split the butter into about tablespoon sized pieces and set that to the side because it's going to go into the batter. And I get a little extra butter to prepare the baking dish. I brush a generous amount in there, and once the oven is heated, I throw the bananas in there for 20 minutes. Next, I'm going to line the baking pan with some parchment paper. This parchment paper is reusable, so I like to keep it around just in case I have a recipe that calls for it. And basically, we're going to create some handles on the side, so you want a little bit of overlap on two edges so that if you need to, you can pull this out. And it also helps you remove it later on when the cake is done. Then we're going to brush the inside of that parchment paper with butter as well. Just set that aside while we work on the next thing, which is the caramelized bananas. You want to remove the stems from each banana. Then we're gonna slice them in half lengthwise, so you have a bunch of like smiley face type shapes. Be careful here not to cut yourself. And this is gonna be the trickiest part of the recipe. The recipe does recommend that you use a non-stick pan since we're going to be melting sugar, and melted sugar really likes to stick to just about everything. But I pour out about a tablespoon of sugar into lines that are about the same shape and size as the bananas and let them sit there for a few minutes. After a while, they'll start to sizzle and the sugar will melt. And we're looking for a golden brown color, and right here I'm just trying to get as much sugar under the bananas as possible. And the sugar is starting to brown up. You might want to just wiggle the bananas a little bit to get better coverage on the bottoms. And once that sugar is golden brown, you can transfer the bananas to a plate and try to keep that sugar side up so it doesn't stick to the plate, because like I was saying, the sugar is very sticky. And between batches, you'll probably want to clean out the inside of your pan, especially if you're not using a non-stick pan, because the sugar will definitely burn on that second batch. And after 20 minutes, I took out those roasting bananas. So over time, you get more and more caramelization on those bananas, but just take your time. You want to clean out that pan between the batches, like I said, to prevent the sugar from burning too much. Now I'm just going to arrange the bananas in the bottom of the baking pan. I was able to fit all the bananas in there. The last one I did have to break up a little bit and rearrange some of the bananas just to make sure they all fit. And of course, you're going to want to remove the banana peels once you have them placed. The bananas on top are optional, but I think they're pretty nice in the end result, as well as it's cool to look at. Now with those roasted bananas, we're going to transfer the flesh into a cup measure. So you're going to want just about a cup of banana flesh. It's fine if you have a little bit less or a little bit more. And you want to leave behind as much liquid as possible. So that's what I'm doing here, pouring off the excess liquid that came along with the flush. And then we're going to transfer that into a medium bowl. And in the medium bowl, we're going to just mash up those bananas as good as possible. And then next, we're going to add the sour cream, the vanilla extract, as well as 3 tablespoons of rum. We're going to give that a whisk until well combined. Once it's well combined, we're going to move on to the dry ingredients and set that wet mixture aside. We're going to weigh out our sugars, the brown sugar and the regular sugar. Give that a whisk, and if you have some more lumpy or hard dark brown sugar, you'll probably want to break it up with your hands. I got lucky this time, it's pretty smooth. Next we'll add the flour and the malted milk powder, which actually has some lumps that I'll have to work out a little bit later. Some salt, the baking powder, as well as baking soda. And then I'm just going to whisk that together. Like I said, the malted milk powder had some clumps, so I used my hands to break them up as I whisked. And once it was pretty smooth and even, I added the butter as well as the banana mixture, half of the banana mixture. And you can just eyeball whatever half is. It doesn't need to be exact for this recipe. We're going to start off on slow speed with the hand mixer just to make sure all of the flour, all the dry ingredients get moistened before we increase the speed. And then we're going to go until it's smooth and glossy. We're going to add the rest of the banana mixture and then add in 2 eggs. We're going to mix that, starting slow to break up the eggs and then speeding it up as it gets more well combined. Scrape down the sides to make sure everything's getting incorporated. And just mix it up a little bit more just to make sure everything's mixed. Then pour all your batter over the prepared bananas, the caramelized bananas, and your baking pan. I decided to give it a little shake to get out any air bubbles and kind of even out this top a little bit. Then I'm going to put that in the oven to bake. After 40 minutes, I took the cake out and tested it with this metal skewer because I don't have toothpicks or a cake tester. The center was a little jiggly, so I put it back in. Still a little bit jiggly here, but it's supposed to be springy to the touch. I thought it was springy, so I let it rest for 20 minutes. And before I transfer it to the cooling rack, I just ran the offset spatula down the sides without the parchment paper. Then I put the cooling rack on top of the cake, which is going to end up being the bottom, and flipped it over. I had no problems getting the cake to come out, just lift straight out. And then I removed the parchment paper. Then I let it cool completely. And while the cake was cooling, I went ahead and made the malted cream. So I added the sour cream, the heavy cream, and then the malted milk powder, and a little bit of confectioner's or powdered sugar to that bowl. And then I'm just going to beat this with the hand mixer until I get some soft peaks, some really soft peaks. They need to look like this. Alright, so this is when I realized that I had undercooked the cake, trying to transfer it to a plate. And you can see all those undercooked parts just falling out of the bottom. So definitely err on the side of cooking it longer to make sure it is fully cooked. You could also tell by that divot in the top. But at this point, the cake is pretty much done and ready to serve. So what did I think of this cake? This was a very, very good cake. Banana cake isn't something that I can recall ever having, but after having this cake, it makes me want to eat more banana cake, or maybe it's just this one is just that good. There's not a lot of flavorings that go into it, but the flavor is really deep and intense. There's a lot of banana flavor, and there's another. It's hard to describe the flavor, but there's just a depth of flavor in this cake. I don't know if it's from the rum or the malted milk powder, or just the fact that the bananas are roasted so they get a more concentrated flavor, but the flavor is just really good. Despite the cake being a little bit undercooked, there are some parts that are cooked all the way through, so I'll kind of tell you what I thought about those parts. And the texture is really nice and tender. It's plenty moist, and I really have no complaints as far as the flavor of the cake goes and the texture. The malted cream, I think it'll be kind of hit or miss for some people. Um, it has a interesting flavor from the sour cream and the malted milk powder. It does work well with the cake, but I feel like some people will definitely prefer the cake on its own without that malted milk powder or that malted cream. Anyway, I decided to give this cake an 8 out of 10 just because it's a little bit tricky to get that those caramelized bananas, and they're optional at the end of the day. So if you don't want them, you don't have to do them, but I recommend that you do. Thanks for watching, and you can read the full analysis for more information on therecipeanalyst.com. Thanks again. Bye.